Hi, everyone, and welcome to the session titled Paradigms of AI Alignment, Components and Enablers by Victoria Krakovna. I'm Sofia Labadeva, and I'll be the MC for this session. I would like to introduce our speaker for this session. Victoria is a research scientist at DeepMind, working on AGI safety, investigating how advanced AI systems would acquire goals and how to ensure those goals are human compatible. She co-founded the Future of Life Institute, a nonprofit organization working to mitigate technological risks to humanity and increase the chances of a positive future. Here's Victoria.
Hello, I'm Victoria Krakovna, a research scientist in AI safety at DeepMind. I'm going to give you an overview of AI alignment. Please note that this presentation reflects my personal views, not those of DeepMind. The goal of AI alignment is to build advanced AI systems that do what we want them to do. However, it's hard to specify what we want, and any attempt to do so is subject to Goodhart's law. When a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good metric. So one example of this is the tale of King Midas, who asked everything he touched to turn to gold. And the way he specified his desire for gold had very bad outcomes for his other preferences, like being able to eat food. We see Goodhart's law in action in present-day AI systems. For example, the boat racing agent in this video that was rewarded for following the racetrack using the green reward blocks, which worked fine until it figured out it can get more reward by going in circles and hitting the same reward blocks repeatedly, while crashing into everything and catching fire. Goodhart's law is only going to get worse as our systems get smarter and better at optimizing the wrong objective. And if we don't succeed at getting advanced AI systems to do what we want, that's pretty bad news for us, because a powerful AGI system that pursues the wrong goal could cause an existential catastrophe, since this AI system would sacrifice the things that we do want in service of that wrong objective, and would also have an incentive to stop us from interfering. So how can we avoid this and instead build an aligned AGI system? So this is the goal of the field of AI alignment. And let's take a high-level overview of what's going on in this field. So I would divide this work into alignment components, which focus on different elements of an aligned system, and alignment enablers, which are research directions that make it easier to get the alignment components right. Of course, this does not include everything that's going on in the field, as many topics don't fit into a neat and simple taxonomy like this. But now we'll take a look at each of these research areas in more detail. And let's start with alignment components. Here we consider different levels of specification of the AI system's objective. Start with the ideal specification, which represents the wishes of the designer, what they have in mind when they build the AI system. And then we have the design specification, which is the objective that we actually implement for the AI system, for example, a reward function. And finally, the revealed specification is the objective that we can infer from behavior, for example, the reward that the system seems to be actually optimizing for. And if the revealed specification matches the ideal specification, then you have an AI system that's behaving in accordance with your wishes. In other words, it's actually doing what you want it to do. And the gaps between these specification levels correspond to different alignment components. We have outer alignment when the design specification matches the ideal specification. For example, when your reward function perfectly represents your wishes. And we have inner alignment when the revealed specification matches the design specification, for example, when the agent ends up actually optimizing the reward that you specified. And now let's take a look at how we can make each of these components happen. For outer alignment, a promising class of approaches is called scalable oversight. And these are proposals for training an aligned system by scaling human oversight to domains that are hard to evaluate. One foundational idea in this space is iterated distillation and amplification, which recursively amplifies human judgment with the assistance of AI. Here we start with an agent A that's imitating the judgment of a human H, which is the distillation step in purple, and then use this agent to assist human judgment at the next level, which is the amplification step in orange. This results in your amplified human HA, and then you just repeat this process. A related proposal for language models is safety via debate, which you could say is a way to implement amplification for language. And here we have two AIs, Alice and Bob, that are debating each other to help a human judge decide on a question. And these AIs have an incentive to point out flaws in each other's arguments and make complex arguments understandable to the judge. The key assumption here is that it's easier to argue for truth than for falsehood. So a truth-telling debater has an advantage. The recent research direction in the space is called Eliciting Latent Knowledge. And this research agenda is looking for ways to get the model to honestly tell us what it knows. We have a part of the model that acts as a reporter, and it can answer queries about what the model knows. We want the reporter to directly translate from the AI's model of the world to human concepts. What we don't want the reporter to do is to simulate what would be convincing to the human and just output that. This is an open problem that authors consider to be the core of outer alignment. A solution to ELK would make the human overseer fully informed about the consequences of the model's actions and enable them to provide correct feedback. And if this works, it would result in a reward signal that we would actually happy for an AI system to optimize. And the authors believe that ELK could actually be solvable without foundational progress on defining things like honesty, agency, corrigibility, and so on. I'm personally not sure about that, but I would really be happy to be wrong on this one. And to make progress on this problem, you can play the builder-breaker game, where the builder proposes possible solutions and the breaker proposes counterexamples or arguments against those solutions. For example, the builder could suggest IDA or debate as a solution to ELK, and the breaker could complain that these methods are not competitive because they require much more computation than unaligned systems. If you're looking to get into alignment research, this is a great topic to get started on. You can try to play the builder-breaker game and see if you can find unexplored parts of the solution space. And now let's take a look at inner alignment, which is a mismatch between the design specification and behavior. And this usually happens through goal misgeneralization, where an AI system learns an unintended goal and competently pursues that goal under distributional shift. And this happens because the agent's capabilities generalize, but its goal does not, which means the agent is competently doing the wrong thing. So it could actually perform worse than random on the intended objective. And this is an underspecification problem, where the agent only observes the design specification and the training data. And so a number of different goals are consistent with the information that the agent receives. The agent can learn an incorrect goal from this set of compatible goals. And this problem can arise even if we get outer alignment right. So even if the design specification of the system's goal is correct. We've been collecting some examples of goal misgeneralization here. So if you know of some, please submit them to our collection. We have a few empirical demonstrations of goal misgeneralization. For example, here is an instance of this in the coin run game, where the agent was trained to reach the coin at the end of the level. But it turns out that if you then place the coin somewhere else that's not at the end of the level, the agent will just ignore it and go to the end. Thus, it appears that the agent has learned the goal of reaching the end rather than the goal of getting the coin. And here we can observe that the agent's capability is generalized, since it can avoid obstacles and enemies and traverse the level, but its goal does not generalize because it ignores the coin. And the particularly concerning type of goal misgeneralization is called learned optimization. Here, the learned model, which we would call the base optimizer, learns to run an explicit search algorithm, which is called a mesa optimizer. And this algorithm could be optimizing for a different objective. So far, learned optimization is a hypothetical phenomenon for AI systems, but it seems likely to arise at some point by analogy to humans, who could be viewed as mesa optimizers relative to evolution. And so far, some mitigations for goal misgeneralization have been proposed. For example, more diversity in the training data, such as training on different locations of the coin, although I have to keep in mind that it is really hard to get diversity in all the relevant variables, especially in complex environments. Another option, the possible mitigation, is to maintain uncertainty over the objective by trying to represent all the possible objectives consistent with the training data. And a particularly concerning type of goal misgeneralization is learning a deceptive model that not only pursues an undesired goal, but also hides this fact from the designers. And in this case, the model knows in some sense that these agents are not in line, its actions are not in line with the designer's intentions. And we could develop mitigations for and misalignment specifically targeted at deceptive models. For example, using interpretability tools to provide feedback on the model's reasoning, and scalable oversight methods like debate could also help with this because the opponent could point out deception. And a solution to ELK could also address this problem by producing a system that would disclose relevant information to its designers. So this was an overview for the components. And now we can take a look at alignment enablers. Mechanistic interpretability aims to build a complete understanding of the systems we build, which could help us understand the reasons behind the system's behaviors and potentially detect undesired goals. For example, the work on reverse engineering vision models studies individual neurons and connections between those neurons to discover meaningful features in circuits. Circuits are subgraphs of the network, which consist of a set of linked features and their weights. For example, here's a circuit that shows how a car detector neuron relies on some lower level features like wheel and window detectors, looking for wheels at the bottom and windows at the top of the image. Some more recent work has focused on reverse engineering language models, and they found similarly meaningful components in circuits and transformers. For example, they found a special type of attention heads that explains how transformer models adapt to a new context. And even though transformers are very different from vision models, it seems like they found some similar principles, like looking for circuits that help understand these different types of models. And this makes me a bit more optimistic about potentially being able to understand more advanced AI systems, even if they have a somewhat different structure from today's systems. Now we can take a look at another type of enablers for alignment, which is to try to understand specific bad incentives that AI systems are likely to develop by default. And these are kind of things that we could potentially use our interpretability tools to check that our alignment components avoid these incentives. And we start with incentive problems in outdoor alignment. One such incentive problem is specification gaming, which you already saw in this boat race example at the beginning of the talk. And there are lots of examples of this. Like so far, I've collected about 60 examples of this kind of behavior. So what can we do about it? One thing is that there has been some progress on categorizing different types of misspecification and quantifying how the degree of specification gaming increases with agent capabilities. For example, in this figure, you can see phase transitions as model size goes up and the model learns specification gaming. So the proxy reward goes up and the true reward goes down. Another common bad incentive is to cause side effects in the environment, because it's difficult to specify all the things that the agent should not do while pursuing its goal. For example, if we don't specify that we want the vase in this picture to be intact, this is equivalent to assuming indifference about the vase. And so the agent is willing to collide with the vase to get to the goal faster. And so far, we've come up with some ways to measure the agent's impact in the environment, such as how much the agent's actions affect the available options, like doing something with the vase later. Now we can consider incentive problems in inner alignment. One such problem is reward tampering, where even if you manage to design the right reward function, any channel for communicating the reward to the agent could in principle be corrupted. And while this is not yet an issue for present-day AI systems because of their limited action space, general AI systems are more likely to face a situation like the one in this rocks and diamonds grid world, where the reward function is represented in the environment. And here the agent could move the word reward next to the rock instead of the diamond and get more reward because there are more rocks in the environment. It is generally quite difficult to draw the line between the part of the world state that represents the objective, which the agent isn't supposed to optimize, and the rest of the world state, which the agent is allowed to optimize. And another problem is that the system will generally prefer states with more options or influence over the environment, which we call a power-seeking incentive. There are some recent results showing power-seeking incentives for most kinds of objectives, even for suboptimal agents like satisficers. A special case of this is that AI systems will have an incentive to avoid being shut down, because this is useful for any objective. As Stuart Russell likes to say, the robot cannot bring you coffee if it's dead. So far, we've made some progress on understanding these incentives and coming up with some solutions, but there's a long way to go. Now, now, let's take a look at some of the foundational work that helps us do better alignment research. Since a lot of AI risk concerns are about AI systems pursuing undesirable goals, it's helpful to consider what we mean by agency or goal-directed behavior. One research direction in this space aims to develop a causal theory of agency and understand different kinds of incentives in a causal framework. And another research direction investigates what it means to be an embedded agent that's not separate from its environment. This is not the case for present-day AI systems that usually have a clear Cartesian boundary, but it's more likely to be the case for AGI systems. And enforcing a Cartesian boundary for an AGI will likely be difficult, given its broad action space and world model. The embedded agent setup poses some unique challenges, such as dealing with self-reference and subagents and so on. And besides understanding how goals and incentives of AI systems work, it's also helpful to understand how their models of the world work. One research area in this space studies abstractions, in particular, whether there are natural abstractions or concepts about the world that would be learned by any agent. And if the natural abstraction hypothesis is true, that would mean that AI systems are likely to acquire human-like concepts as they build their models of the world. This makes interpretability easier and makes it easier to communicate to our systems what we want them to do. So this was an overview of alignment components and enablers. Now, natural question is, what can you do if you're excited to contribute to alignment? So one thing you can start with is to check out my list of AI safety resources for research agendas, some selected work in these different areas, and a list of project ideas. There's also the 80,000 AI safety career review that you can read. And I would definitely recommend taking the online AGI Safety Fundamentals course, which is run by EAGxCambridge. There are now quite a few programs and fellowships in AI safety where you can work on alignment projects with like-minded researchers for a few months, like the AI Safety Camp, SERI-MATS, ML Safety Scholars Program, and so on. And as you learn more about alignment, you can also think about gaps in the alignment landscape. For example, what important components or different breakdowns of building safe AI you might be missing? Are there better ways to break down the problem space? And what's the next research agenda that might need to be written? Well, thank you and good luck.
Hello. Just a reminder for everyone that you guys can send your questions in the questions function of the live discussion on Swapcard. Right now we have one question, so we're going to wait for hopefully some more. But while we're there, Victoria, could you talk us through a few more kind of like suggestions for how people can get involved in AI safety and alignment? Yeah.
So, yeah, hi everyone. Now, these days there are quite a lot of ways to get involved. Yeah, there are a lot of there are a lot of good resources on AI safety, as evidenced by kind of my long list of resources that to recommend to check out. I think there's I think it's there's quite a few like research agendas in the field these days. So if you are kind of not sure which part of alignment is like the most interesting or seems the most important, and kind of reading through the research agendas, I think is a good it's a good idea. I think the fundamentals course is quite good as well. I guess like so in this question, do you mean like, do I have recommendations besides the ones that I kind of listed in the talk?
Feel free to go over them again, or kind of like give more recommendations, or just kind of give a flavor as to what the resources kind of state. Yeah, whatever you feel is best. If you feel that like people should just reference the list that you already provided, that's totally fine too. But any advice is also really helpful, I think. That's more kind of like on a personal level.
Yeah, one thing that I'm really happy about is that like there are a lot of ways for the kind of aspiring safety researchers to like work with others and like get started on AI safety projects, like in the various the various kind of programs that have sprung up in the last few years, SERI-MATS and MLSS, and of course the AI Safety Camp and so on. So yeah, it's really nice to see these initiatives, because I think there used to be more of a mentorship bottleneck where like people were trying to get like a very small number of internships and so on. So yeah, I think there are a lot more opportunities now to kind of get your hands dirty and start doing some safety research.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. So we have a number of questions in the questions tab. So people that are wondering what order I'm going in, I'm just going to go through the highest upvoted question and go down. So make sure to upvote the questions that you would like to be asked. The first question that we have is, could you speak a little bit about the approach that DeepMind is taking to alignment research?
So I would say that we take kind of a portfolio approach to alignment research, in the sense that people on our team are working on a lot of different things. So there's some people working on like mechanistic interpretability, like Krakovna style work. Some people working on like more kind of like conceptual or like foundational research. We had a project on goal misgeneralization that we recently finally put in archive, and yeah, there are various different directions. So basically, like I think if someone joins DeepMind alignment team, and then in principle they can work on kind of anything they can, sort of argue is important for alignment. We've been trying to be a little bit more coordinated and organized in the past year or so, but yeah, overall I think it's definitely still a portfolio approach and trying to kind of make different bets in alignment space.
Great. Yeah, thank you. The next question that we have is, do you think RL will be wiped out, become obsolete as transformers show great results? Can transformers be counted as an agent? And if yes, why? So should we not focus on RL but NLP instead?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think it's I think there's not really like a very clear dividing line between these things anymore, because often like people fine-tune transformers using reinforcement learning, and then you get a bit of both. So yeah, I think it's true that like a pure transformer is like less agenty than a reinforcement learning agent, and some of the same concerns might not apply. I think Conjecture had a great blog post about this, the kind of simulator hypothesis, which was very interesting to think about. But yes, I think given that like fine tuning with RL seems to be quite commonplace, and that seems like fine-tuned foundation models might be like plausibly kind of continue sort of being the front runner to more advanced AI, then we might still have some of the same issues with like power seeking incentives and other things that kind of come with using reinforcement learning. So I think it will be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm not sure which kind of models will be more dominant, but yeah, I think we might need to like study like transformers fine-tuned with RL more closely and think about like agency problems specifically in that context.
That makes a lot of sense. Very helpful. Thank you. And the next question that we have is, a lot of people dream about working at DeepMind. How can they get a shot? What kind of people are you usually looking for? How to stand out in the crowd of CVs? Commercial experience, academic background. Sorry, it's kind of a lot of different questions, and then I'll ask the last part of this question after that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So usually, we in the alignment team, we look for people with research experience, not necessarily with a lot of experience in alignment, because usually, like, as long as people generally like understand what alignment is about and are like interested in counteracting existential risk, then like they can pick up a lot of the relevant knowledge in the job, like about alignment specifically. But yeah, I think it also depends what role you're applying for in terms of like what are kind of the required qualifications. So for the research scientist position, we usually look for either a PhD in a technical field like machine learning or computer science or math or physics oftentimes, or like equivalent practical experience. So if you don't have a PhD but you have like several papers at DocML conferences. That's also like, that's also quite good. For research engineers, we don't require as much research experience. I think so you don't need a PhD to apply as a research engineer. But of course, you would need some way to demonstrate like coding abilities. Maybe like if you've been able to reproduce some state-of-the-art machine learning results. That's generally a good indication. So I'm not sure if I'm answering all the parts of the question, because I think there were
I'll ask the last part of the question as well. So what are the biggest career gaps in your field? And I'm assuming that's in terms of skills or kind of like, I guess, particular things that people could be working on or like trying to gain more skills in.
Career gaps, meaning that like ways that people who want to work on alignment to DeepMind could like improve before applying. I think like I think getting more research experience is useful, and I think what's often the case is that like someone is interested in working in alignment, but they're maybe coming from non-academic background, or don't necessarily have like kind of as much experience with doing research. In the case, like either doing graduate school or getting the research experience in some other way, I think is a good idea in that case. But generally, like I think it's good to do something that gives you kind of enough feedback about whether this is the right career path. So maybe doing internships or fellowships and these sort of things. I think that's one thing. I think often like we encounter either people who with like more research experience, like who are maybe somewhat less interested in alignment and maybe end up kind of going elsewhere at DeepMind, or there are like those people who are very interested in alignment but don't have as much of that background. So that's I think that gap has been reducing in recent years though. So I think that's one thing, because we at least in our team, we don't have like much capacity to like teach people how to do research. So like we generally like look for people who like already know how to do research and who can kind of come in and be like relatively self-directed, while also like being able to collaborate and figure out like research priorities together and so on. But I think like if you already have some general idea of like what you want to work on in alignment, what your research agenda is, but also if you have kind of enough flexibility to kind of adapt to like what other people are doing and what kind of makes more sense to like prioritize and collaborate on, then I think that's a good place to be.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. The next question that we have is, what is your take on the extreme doom view, for example, Eliciting dying with dignity towards AI alignment?
So I think I tend to be like somewhat more optimistic than that, although it's I guess it's not saying much since the extremely doom view is very pessimistic. But I think what I find is that like the kind of the arguments for kind of like high probability of doom bring up a lot of like important considerations, but sometimes I think they seem to be a bit overconfident in terms of like the magnitude of the effect that those considerations have. I did spend some time like thinking about the AGI ruin arguments, and we were like discussing them within the team, and it was I think it was definitely like very useful to like have those discussions to kind of engage with those considerations. So I'm really happy that like Eliezer wrote up that list of like kind of concrete reasons why like AGI would kind of definitely kill us. But I think like from our perspective, there's some of those points that like I don't agree with as much, or I would say like this is a reason for concern, but maybe like it's not clear that like definitely means that it's kind of hopeless to like, let's say, avoid building AGI or to like solve kind of the relevant problems. So yeah, sorry, I might be kind of being a bit vague, but I think like I don't know if I should go into more detail, but I guess like if you guys are like interested in kind of specific opinions on like on the doom arguments from DeepMind alignment, then yeah, I wrote a post about this in the alignment forum a couple of months ago, where we kind of have sort of like a mini survey of the team about like how much people agree with different the different arguments. I think overall, like yeah, there was a lot of agreement with the general considerations, but just like less confidence that like they would lead necessarily to very bad outcomes. Like I think like one sort of premise in those arguments is that like you're just going to have this like transition in capabilities, and then like all the alignment techniques will go out the window, and that's something that like I'm still kind of mulling over and thinking about like how likely is that. But overall, like I think it's not clear that like we would have like no warning, or that like our sort of alignment tools just like wouldn't work at all. So I agree that's the worst case, but how likely the worst case is like not very clear. And yeah, I think the same applies to like some of the other arguments. I think also like I think that the sort of doomy view is particularly pessimistic about like interpretability working at all, and that's something that like is maybe one of the biggest differences, at least like with my view. I think like of course interpretability is pretty hard, but kind of depending on how much time we have left, I think it is like at least in principle like something we can make a lot of progress on. So yeah, if you guys want to read more, there's a long post about what do you think about that? Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I also just want to make sure, guys, please keep upvoting your questions, just because we do have a little bit of time left, and I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat, which is great. But just to make sure that we get to the ones that we really get to, the ones that people really want answered. So just make sure to upvote the ones you really want answered. And the next question that we have is, how can you understand if you can make a relevant contribution to the field? What kind of signals should you watch out for?
How can you understand that you can make a relevant contribution? Yeah, I think that's also an important question. I think one sort of way to think about this is like kind of trying to clarify like what is your theory of change, like what is like kind of what is the kind of the threat model that you're trying to address, and why is that what you're doing address the threat model. And if you kind of have more complete picture like that, then I think you're like more likely to be kind of making a valuable contribution. I think also just like getting feedback from others in the field is useful. So like I think if you're if you're working on something that you're not sure like kind of how much it contributes or how relevant it is, I think it's good to like err on the side of like putting it out there and be like put it on that's wrong, or like send it to other people working on alignment, and then like get that feedback. And if you like might feel like, oh, I should polish this a lot more before sharing it with people, I think it's good to iterate and like communicate about it and like kind of prioritize that.
Yeah, great, thank you. The next question we have is, what are Alphabet or DeepMind leadership's view on AI alignment research, especially since the benefits don't always realize until very far into the future? What do you think is required to convince leadership from other big tech companies to invest into AI alignment?
So I think like DeepMind leadership is quite positive on alignment research, and Shane was leading the alignment team himself for a number of years. And yeah, I think like, I mean, I think they know that like, advanced AI is going to be a powerful thing. And it's not going to be trivial to make sure that like it's actually like doing what we want. So they're familiar with like I think the basic case for alignment being hard. I think I don't know as much about alphabet leadership. I think like of course DeepMind and alphabet leadership do talk to each other. So like we can kind of extrapolate to alphabet leadership as well. But yeah, I think it's a good question, like how to make this more common among like the leadership of tech companies in general. I think there's a lot of variance in this, but generally like I think companies that are explicitly trying to build AGI, like DeepMind or OpenAI, I think they kind of have to think about these questions, because like they're actually asking the question of like, what if we succeed? What if we like build this really powerful system that can solve lots of problems in the world? And then like that brings up the question of like, well, what if we succeed and then it goes really badly? So I think that that makes them think about it a lot more, while like other tech companies that are just kind of like doing AI research but not particularly aiming for AGI, like they don't really have to ask these questions, and they can just kind of say, well, AGI is far away, or it will never happen, or something. So yeah, I think as like as timelines get shorter, and like various other players would have to think about like the implications of advanced AI. But one thing that like I would want them to like be more aware of is that they you might build advanced AI by accident, or like more advanced than you think, or you might build like an unaligned AI by accident. And that's something that like at least I've seen some of the like some of the people leading these teams like not necessarily be aware of. Like I remember having a conversation with Jan LeCun at a conference a long time ago, where he like seemed very confident that like AI systems will not have self-preservation or whatever drives unless we build them in, and that seems like not a thing one should be confident about. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how like people's thinking about it has evolved over time, but yeah, I'm hoping that some of the concern about AI safety will come from like AGI becoming a more real possibility.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much. The next question that we have is regarding meta optimization. Can we avoid meta optimizers and hence the inner alignment problem and still have useful models? Or is meta optimization necessary and useful for models?
I think that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I think it depends also like on how you're defining meta optimization. I think like of course like it's useful for models to be able to like run some kind of explicit search internally, but it's not clear whether you really need that to be able to like solve lots of tasks. So yeah, I think like possible that like meta optimization makes models more useful, but like how big the gap is, I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. The next question we have is, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I have the right. Okay. Nate Soares has suggested that success in AI safety work will depend on having enough genius researcher years, which cannot be compensated with lots of decent researcher years. Do you have any insights or commentary on this claim?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it's of course it's helpful to have geniuses working in alignment. The more the better. So I mean, as long as like they're actually trying to solve the right problem. So yeah, I think it's also like I'm not really sure how to like how to tell whether like whether we found the right people to work in alignment or not. I think this also like I think this to some extent this claim is an artifact of like the the broader MERE view that like alignment is extremely difficult and that like you have to hit a very specific target and like you have to be like you have to like solve extremely difficult problems, and so you have to be like extremely smart. But yeah, I think like it is possible that we are in that world. I'm not sure how likely that is. I think like it's also possible that like alignment is like hard, but not as ridiculously hard. And then like I think it might be more parallelizable, or maybe like if there are some like kind of central insights that like the geniuses find that like a lot of other people can build on, like maybe there's like a lot of like empirical experiments that like are helpful that like a lot of people can do without being geniuses. So yeah, I mean it's a bit hard for me to like have a good picture of this. I mean, I'm not a genius myself, so I don't know like kind of how big the gap is. But yeah, I think like if kind of the more like the closer we are to the prosaic AI, prosaic alignment world, where we can make progress in alignment by like kind of building on things that we know, like without kind of very like huge fundamental insights, the less true the claim is. So yeah, of course we want to be like prepared for the worst case. So if you know any geniuses who you can convince to work on alignment, then that's great. But yeah, I think it's plausible that we're not in that world.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to, I don't know how to define a genius from just like an average person, because I feel like the bar is already so high.
Yeah, I think that's, I think it also like, I think that claim is kind of like factoring out the kind of collaboration factor.
Yeah.
And I think like, people who are like very smart, who are, like, but no geniuses who are collaborating with each other might still be able to find some of those like difficult insights as well. So yeah, I think building really good teams to work on alignment is another like, good thing to do.
Yeah. I think something that kind of ties into with this question is, do you think EA value alignment is important for people working with AI alignment to ensure that they make a positive impact? And how do you kind of propose going about it if you do think it's important?
So I'm not sure what is meant by like EA value alignment. Do you mean like does the person need to identify as an EA, or just like
pretty much, yeah, or like have similar values to that of an EA?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I don't think it's like really required, although in practice, like, a lot of people who make progress in alignment also identify with as EAs. But I think like, in theory, all that's required to care about alignment is to like not want humanity to go extinct, which presumably like a lot of people don't want that. I guess there's something, I mean, there has to be something there about like, being able to take ideas seriously, even when like there isn't already a consensus that like AI can lead to human extinction. So that's a skill that like, or kind of a mental habit that's like a lot more common among EAs than the general population. So yeah, I think there has to be some like overlap in values, like in some ways, like choosing what to work on based on like which problems are really important, or like how do I have like a large impact on the world. But I think it doesn't have to be kind of a complete identification with like all the tenets of EAs. I think there has to be like maybe like a basic overlap in values, and in that sense of like caring about impact and like being able to think about like potentially like world scale impact, and being able to like think about kind of problems that are like not necessarily manifesting as much right now, but like manifest in 10 years or something that like would have that large impact on the world.
Great. I think we can take maybe about 2 more questions. And so one of the questions is, it's fairly long, but do you have any forecasts or insights as to whether AI safety success will depend on being able to experiment with very powerful models, or at crunch time, for example, only a year or two away from being able to deploy an AGI. So, for example, is safety research 2 times, 10x, or 100x more productive on a per person scale when we have, quote, very powerful models? Or can we make similarly significant progress in the near term through conceptual safety work? Fairly wordy, so let me know if you want help, like rereading it. Yeah.
So is the question like, sorry, what was the beginning of the question again?
Yeah. Do you have any forecasts or insights as to whether AI safety success will depend on being able to experiment with, quote, very powerful models or, quote, at crunch time?
Right. So like, how much does the success of AI safety depend on being able to experiment with very powerful models? I do think that like that will help a lot if we can do that. I think if there is like a relatively smooth kind of, transition in capabilities rather than like a very sharp transition, then like if you have models that are gradually kind of becoming more powerful but are not yet not yet at AGI level, then you can probably learn a lot about various alignment properties by kind of testing them in various ways. So I think that helps, and I think also like with the conceptual work that's going on now, like to whatever extent we can set up some sort of like empirical tests even on current models, I think that's also helpful. I'm not sure whether like the kind of the ability to test on powerful models is required for AI safety to succeed. Because we might be able to find like sufficiently general alignment techniques that they sort of get through like a sharper transition capabilities as well. But yeah, I think it also like, of course this depends on takeoff speed as well. Like how long the crunch time is, because we would actually like need enough time to like make some kind of conclusions from these tests and like come up with develop some kind of like demos of bad behavior that would like help people working on capabilities to change course if necessary and so on. So yeah, I mean, to the extent that we can iterate, then we should do that. But I think we need to set up some of the infrastructure for that now, for like monitoring capabilities of current systems, so that like that would we would have that already in place for crunch time whenever that is.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I think the last question, which I really like, is what do you think are the least promising approaches to alignment and why? And then I think we'll end after that. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my current sense is that like inner alignment seems like the more difficult part of the problem. So I think the approaches that like just focus on outer alignment are like seem less promising for like solving the whole problem. So because like some of outer alignment would be like probably addressed kind of in the course of solving a lot of the capabilities challenges as well. So like one example is like I was working on like impact regularization for the first few years of at DeepMind, which was like I think at the time like a really good thing for me to work on, and like I learned a lot of stuff about like how to think about alignment in the process. But I think one of the reasons that I don't work on this currently is that like that's like just kind of solving an outer alignment problem, and if inner alignment is like the most sort of is where the kind of most of the difficulties are, then like that's I think that's what we should focus on. So yeah, I think that's also like one reason to like think about kind of what the theory of change for your research is, because if you can't come up with a good theory of change, then it could be a pointer that like maybe that's like a less promising direction to work on. Not sure if I have other pointers. I mean, it's also like it's a bit of a it's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because I don't want to point to like a very specific kind of things that people are doing, and like kind of
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that concludes the talk for today. And thank you everyone so much for attending. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, wherever you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.